Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. This is the Matchday Bulletin, and I'm joined by Laura Bradburn to look back on the first 45 minutes that Celtic won Hearts 0. Laura, what's your thoughts on the first half before we start picking the bones of it?
I think overall thoughts, it was just pretty frantic, to be honest, was the word that comes to mind. I mean, it was go the entire half. Almost to the point of, I remember as a few weeks ago, or certainly back at the start of some of the new players' time, sort of saying that they needed to calm down a little bit and just get a foot on the ball, which I think they probably needed to do again after today, because I think they've played well, but certainly just need to calm it down and take their time a little bit more, I would say.
Yes. Now, David Kelly has come in to make a comment. He's watching on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, David. Playing really well, but dropped off a little bit after the goal. Don't usually buy into the ref bashing, but Madden is a cheat. No other way to say it than that. He shouldn't be allowed to ref Celtic games. Now, I'm going to pick up on this because I've been pretty vocal, Laura, all season on a Celtic state of mind in relation to the refereeing performances. Tonight is one of the worst. I've counted 7 challenges where they've gone unpunished against Celtic players. The first one was in the first minute. And, I know that it wasn't a bad challenge that resulted in Ralston going off. But when you've had a couple of boots in the first 20 minutes, then maybe overstretching might result in you getting a wee strain. 2 minutes on the clock. And Ralston, I'm looking at the challenge from Mackay. It was shocking. It was a shocking challenge. I think that, out of the first half to have 7 different challenges against Celtic players that went unpunished. And one of the worst as well was Kyogo. He was scythed by Devlin, who, when he walked back into the box, was smiling at his fellow defenders, Laura. I think it's a horrific refereeing display in that first half.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Like, I'm one of those people who kind of always likes to kind of say, oh, let's not get involved in conspiracy theories or anything of the sort. But you can't continue to ignore something that's staring you in the face. It just seems to be ignoring heavy challenges on Celtic players, and especially with those early ones. Like, you always hear this kind of, oh, you get one free one or that kind of thing. That isn't how it should work. If it's a dangerous challenge, or if it's a challenge that's in any way against the rules, it just shouldn't be allowed, and he just doesn't seem to be following the same rules that he would follow for other teams. Now, I would like to think that you could be professional enough in a setting like that to actually do the job properly, but when the evidence suggests otherwise, you've got to wonder, what is behind those decisions in terms of, like why we don't seem to get those decisions going for us. And I wouldn't even say it's particularly just this referee. I just mean in general this season it's been a little bit biased towards other teams, and I think even as somebody who tries not to get involved in discussions of that nature, it's been apparent to me as well.
Oh, it's so obvious. I mean, as I say, one of the first things that we've seen tonight was Ralston getting taken out by Mackay. You've got Kyogo. There was 2 on Juranovic. We could go on and on and on. Ralston was impeded again whilst he was shooting. He shot off over the bar. He wasn't claiming for a corner, as the commentator said. He was claiming for the fact that he was hacked to the ground whilst trying to take the shot. And then one of the most obvious ones, Starfelt, who I would like to speak about as well, wrestled to the deck by Halkett. No free kick given. 2 minutes later, Starfelt is penalised for tipping up a Hearts player. It's just so inconsistent. The refereeing so poor. But that leads me on to Starfelt, back in the side after a bit of a layoff through injury. How do you think he's done?
I think he's done all right. I mean, I know we were having a bit of discussion in the group chat about, I think everybody accepts that he's good defensively. Where some people have some issues is he's when he's in possession and when he's looking for passes and things like that. But I actually think, for me, I've certainly seen him play worse than he has tonight, and I actually think him and Welsh have worked well together, and have dealt well with most of the issues they've had to come up against, and certainly from a possession point of view and going forward, they've not caused any concern for me. I just am looking for, not necessarily for them to be even be particularly outstanding, but just for us not to notice a massive weakness without Carter Vickers. And I think we can say at the very least that that's the case tonight. You know, that there's not been a very obvious hole in that defence so far.
No, it's been fairly solid, Laura. Now, I'm going to have to stop predicting things like Beaton coming off early and us having to play Murray, as we did against Midtjylland, or Hart coming off early, as he almost did against Aberdeen, because we were speaking about Juranovic and him being forced to play left back, and before you know it, Ralston's injured and he's now playing in his natural right back position. We hope that it's not anything serious with Ralston, because he is the most improved player in the Celtic squad by some distance. But I'm also silver linings and all that, looking forward to seeing Montgomery getting some game time, but also Juranovic at right back, his natural position.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because obviously it was part of the discussion that was being had in the pre-match press conference, like I said, before the match. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of a difference it makes for him to be on his favoured right-hand side. Because I do remember a couple of times him playing that there sort of at the beginning of the season and thinking to myself, you know, he's quite obviously much more comfortable there, and not only that, but he's actually a very, you know, accomplished fullback. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in the second half, because it might, unfortunately for Ralston, it might end up in a situation where you've got Juranovic going back into his favoured position, and it's going to be very difficult for Ralston to win that shirt back. But obviously this is all, you know, conjecture, and you're talking pretty far ahead. We just need to see how things go as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Porter comes in. And who's going to argue with that? Andrew's a footballing genius. Yes, he is. Magnet 67, some superb football. There has been. And I'll tell you what, Ralston was involved in quite a bit of that. Let's talk about the goal. What a well-worked goal that was. And it was kind of like Ralston taking the game by the scruff of the neck. A bit of brilliance by Tommy Rogic, whose awareness is unbelievable. Ralston overlaps. The cross is inch perfect. And a superb finish by Kyogo.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching Kyogo when he first came to the club, and there was a couple of games where he did that exact thing, where he nicked in at the front post and just tapped the ball in, and thinking to myself, that's exactly what we need in a Celtic striker. And he did it again tonight. The ball from Ralston was great. The overlap and run that he got, he went on to actually get the ball. I think it was Rogic that laid it off to him from there. And then he just drilled it in. There was no chance that Craig Gordon was going to be able to stop it. And when you've got somebody of Kyogo's nature, who's not only mentally a step ahead, but physically follows through with that as well. You know, the defenders were on their heels, and he seemed to have all the space in the world to do what he needed to do.
No, you're right. One thing I did notice as well, I mean, that was a tremendous bit of play by Ralston and Rogic. And I want to speak about Rogic in his own right. But before I do that, there were a few occasions prior to the goal where Celtic simply played a dink over the top to Kyogo, and it almost paid off. You'll remember the Leverkusen game at Celtic Park where Cameron Carter-Vickers did exactly that, and it just split the defence wide open. We've done it 2 or 3 times against Hearts tonight. It's obvious that Celtic have identified that as a weakness in the Hearts defence.
Yeah, they absolutely have. It's almost been just misfortune on our part that we haven't got a touch on something, because I think that's 2 very obvious ones I can remember was Kyogo being through in that way and Turnbull being through. They just put out a foot and it slightly missed them. They if they'd had a chance to control it, they'd have been on their own in front of the goalkeeper. So hopefully, if it's something we persist with, it will come off for us in the second half, because Hearts towards the end of the first half did have a couple of chances. So as is always the case when it's at 1-0, you're never totally comfortable. I would like to see one of those chances come off and us get a 2-goal cushion pretty early in the second half to hopefully help us see it out.
Yeah, you would hope so. Brian Watt comes in. Welcome back, Brian. You've got Andy Tom as your avatar. Disappointed for Ralston coming off. But as we were saying earlier, looking forward to seeing Juranovic in his proper position. Absolutely. And Shane Donovan, just coming up, watching on YouTube, Rogic being on the field, creates so much more space. Let's have a wee chat then about Tommy Rogic. Before we do that, though, Klim, 1968, good evening from or a Matila, is that right, in Finland? What a difference a Rogic makes. What a difference indeed, Laura. He's a wizard. And, with regards to the creativity, I know that we've got a lot of creativity down the left with Jota. We've got that in David Turnbull. But what he provides is just something completely different, Tommy Rogic.
Yeah, I mean, I saw somebody on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, described him as the anchor of this team, which he kind of is. He seems to be able to find space and find pockets that players who replace him in the team are not able to find. And it's been said so often before already this season, but it's more clear tonight than ever that for everything that Ange is trying to do, for the style that he's trying to play, for the way that he wants the team to attack, Rogic is key to that, and certainly in getting that message across to the players on the pitch as well. Who'd have thought, 12, 18 months ago that we'd be sitting here saying that, we really miss Rogic not being in the team, but it is the case right now. And, for the way he's been playing, hopefully he continues to do so for the rest of the season. And if he can stay fit, if he can stay, sort of playing as intensely as he's been playing this season and keep up with the schedule, which I know is his only downfall, really. If he can do that, then we're going to be really, really all the better for it towards the second half of the season.
Yeah, when I look at Tommy Rogic and the performances that he's producing for us at the moment, and the fact that we've missed him so much since, he went off injured against Hibs at Easter Road, I find myself thinking back to last season and the Tommy Rogic that we witnessed last season. It's maybe an unfair barometer because last season was poor in so many respects, Laura. There were very few players that came out with any kind of credit last year. But you're right, if Tommy Rogic had left in the summer, no one would have batted an eyelid. And that for me is pretty sad because of what he had done as a Celtic player in the previous 7 years before this season. I mean, some of the moments he provided, some of the goals that he scored, some of the games that he won, big games. But Tommy Rogic's only 28 years of age. And I think that, there was the whole thing when Ange Postecoglou came in and we were trying to speak to people in the know, people who knew the Australian game, people who knew the Japanese game. And one of the big questions we kept asking is he going to rejuvenate someone like Tommy Rogic? And it was inconclusive. I mean, the reason we were asking it, they're both Australian, and they've worked together for the national team. Therefore, in our minds, he must be able to get a tune out of him, and he has. And I think that now, what we're seeing tonight with his return is just how important a part he is in the great scheme of things, in the whole process that was being called Ange Ball. Thankfully, that term is not being used very often. It's now just the process. But he's a massive part of that. But I'm going to say this again. I think that it works better when it is only Rogic or Turnbull, because there might come a point in tonight's game, Laura, because he's been out injured and because Tom Rogic doesn't always finish the 90 minutes, where you would maybe like to give him 20 minutes near the end, but the player you would be looking to bring on is David Turnbull. With that in mind, what kind of changes do you think Ange is looking at, or will he be quite happy with the performance in that first half?
To be honest, I would like to see him stick with things as they've been. Obviously, there was that enforced change with Ralston going off, which is unfortunate, but I don't. It's one of those cases, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing, and I think that's the way it really should be. I think if we can get another goal early in the second half, you might want to look at bringing Kyogo off, just for the volume of football he's played over the last 18 months. You might want to look at bringing one of the midfield three off just to give them a rest, because the way they're playing is so intense and so vital to the way that we're playing the match tonight. So that's really the only differences I would want to make, is maybe make a change in midfield and maybe think about taking Kyogo off, but only once the game's wrapped up.
Yeah, the players are on the park, Laura. And I've got to say, the season ticket pass has been good tonight because Tom Boyd has been getting stuck right in about Bobby Madden. And quite rightly so, because it was a horrific first half performance by the referee. Let's rejoin the action. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the chat. And thank you to Laura Bradburn for joining me on a Celtic